We can't fund every program that a state government comes up with. They've got their responsibilities, we've got ours, and we'll continue to meet our obligation.
That tough talk offset by some tough numbers. Labor leading today's Newspoll 56 to 44, the coalition's worst poll since the 2018 leadership spill. The PM's personal numbers have plummeted too. Net satisfaction and better PM ratings both sliding from pandemic highs towards the lows of Black Summer. Simmering anger over the handling of Omicron spilling over.
I don't think it's just one thing. The rats were just the straw which broke the camel's back. People have had enough and they think it's time for a change.
Bouncing back from COVID is still voters' number one concern. But for the first time, respondents would rather see Anthony Albanese leading the pandemic recovery.
This government's big grand slam of failures during this pandemic, of tracing, testing, quarantine facilities and vaccinations, is there for all to see.
Just months out from the election, the federal treasurer's content to play the long game.
There's only one poll that counts in politics, that's election day.
And he's resisting the urge to spend his way back into voters' good books.
Every single day of this pandemic, we've been supporting businesses and indeed families right across Australia. In New South Wales alone, we have delivered more than $63 billion.
The federal government leaving New South Wales to go it alone on a small business support package.
Well, I'm very disappointed. I was hoping to make this announcement standing beside the Prime Minister today and the Treasurer Frydenberg, but they're not to be found. Australian businesses are doing it so tough at this time.
When South Australia just yesterday announced a small business support package, they didn't come to the Commonwealth asking to go 50-50, they just did it alone.
So with Omicron still raging, is the federal government turning off the tap too soon?
And the very disappointed New South Wales Treasurer, Matt Kean, joins us now. Matt, the Treasurer said there, we just heard in that story, they can't fund every program. Is that fair enough?
That's certainly fair enough. We need to protect the nation's finances, but the Australian budget is there to serve the Australian people, and if it's not being used to prop up our economy and support our small businesses when they most need it, then what's it being used for, Waleed?
Sure, but there is always need. And as we heard in that package, Josh Frydenberg saying that New South Wales has received $63 billion. That is a lot of money in anyone's language. It's a historic amount of money. Does there not come a point where we have to say they've done their bit and it's now over to you?
Well, we welcome the federal government's investment in New South Wales. But as I said, Ash Barty didn't win the Australian Open because of how she played in the semi-final. You need to meet each challenge as it arises. And Omicron has had a huge impact on certain sections of the economy. Those businesses that ply their trade through face-to-face trading, hairdressers, beauty salons, retailers, cafes, these guys have done it so tough. And we need to support them to get through this economic shock so that we can bring our entire economy out stronger on the other side.
Treasurer, let's go back to December 15. You and the Premier Dominic Perrottet basically said, let's let this thing rip, despite health advice that wasn't to let it rip. Do you still stand by that, given the death toll that you've seen over the last week or so?
Steve, the challenge that New South Wales is facing is the same as every other state and territory and indeed all around the world. Omicron has gone out and hurt the economy. It's hurt the community, and we're facing the same challenges as everywhere else is facing. What we're trying to do now is mitigate the impact that that's having, not only on health, but also on the economy, which is why we're supporting those parts of the economy that are doing it so tough. And it's why we're calling on the federal government to stand with us and support our small business sector, because they need help now more than ever.
Federal National MP Pat Conahan today gave you a fairly blunt character assessment on my radio program. Let's have a listen.
For Kean to say that the federal government is nowhere to be seen, in my view, is simply a reflection of his own ego, Steve. It made me so angry. I mean, this guy's got his head so far up, you know where, he could give himself a prostate inspection.
How's your prostate?
Well, look, I'm no doctor, but what I will say is that I'm not interested in the personality politics. I'm interested in standing up for small business. And our small businesses in New South Wales, our cafes, our restaurants, our hospitality industry, our tourist operators, they've been absolutely smashed through no fault of their own. Now, it's different to Delta and Alpha, where government imposed lockdowns, and that caused damage to small businesses. But the impact that this has had is because consumers don't feel confident to go out to a restaurant. They don't feel confident to leave the home for fear that they might get sick. So those businesses are struggling through no fault of their own, and government needs to support them so they can keep their doors open, keep employing workers, keep serving customers, and help our economy bounce back stronger on the other side. And not just here in New South Wales, it's in our national interest as well. So these aren't just New South Wales businesses, they're Australian businesses, and they need their national government to stand up and support them at this very difficult time.
But Treasurer, isn't the point that these businesses are suffering because people have put themselves into this shadow lockdown because of conditions and decisions that you made as a government?
Well, the conditions that New South Wales businesses are facing are the same ones being faced by small businesses in Victoria and Tasmania, right around the country at the moment. So the challenge that we're dealing with is the same one that other governments are facing with the policies that they've put in place also. What my focus is in getting these businesses through this economic shock so that we can bounce back stronger as an economy on the other side. And I think the federal government should also be joining us to help get us through this period. We implemented the national roadmap. We gave effect to the decisions of the National Cabinet. Here in New South Wales, we kept our borders open to be a gateway for people to come back into the country. So if we're all in it together, we need to be now as well. And that means supporting our small businesses who are struggling through this period.
Matt Kean, thanks very much for your time and all the best with your prostate.
Thank you very much.